perspective, also the Turkish secular elite were skeptical about having an Islamist government in power. They were afraid that this would bring an end to the EU project, that they would be distancing themselves from the ultimate Turkish aim, the ultimate aim of the modern Turkish state of Westernization. Neither the European opponents of Turkey nor the secularist elite within the country could envision that an Islamist identity could be in harmony with the European. Turkey is a country that has taken secularism to a level that even goes beyond the French laïcité. The long existence of secular system based on Western, more specifically European French system in Muslim Turkey wasn't enough to undermine the Orientalist dichotomies. In addition, the very presence of Turkey and persistence of Turkey in the EU project, despite the increasing opposition, wasn't enough to prove that Turkey is still sincere with going on with the EU membership process. To the surprise of many, the Islamist AKP government continued to uphold the secular values and clearly stated from the beginning that they had no intention to challenge the secular nature of the state. They assured the people that they would pursue the EU standards in economic, social, political areas to ensure better service for their citizens. The official party program states that they will make the necessary changes to the judicial system and rest of the legal system to achieve the Copenhagen criteria, which I will talk about in a minute. The party program also highlights that European nations shall continue to be a part of at the top of the list in foreign policy agenda of Turkey. It also asserts that the Turkish eagerness fulfilling the conditions of the EU membership process is continuing. Ironically, and again to the surprise of many opponents, Kemal Kirişçi argues that the most progress in the Turkish EU membership prospect was received under the leadership of AKP. Another major irony lies in the fact that Turkey has become more economically and socially stable and more democratic, but in the meantime, European resistance has simultaneously increased. Many of the necessary revisions and reforms were made and new policies were implemented. There is still more that needs to be done. In addition to numerous economic reforms, a set of challenging revisions was made to the Turkish legal system. Although the target is still at a distance, considerable progress was achieved in terms of certain aspects of human rights, especially with respect to some individual freedoms. I do have to make another reference to the presentations in the morning, that one of the areas of exception that was not dealt with was the headscarf issue. Although there was an attempt to lift the ban, it was not successful, so this issue was put off until an unknown future. The 2010 report of the EU Commission argues that in addition to the progress in economic and legal areas in the EU harmonization process, Turkey continues to sufficiently fulfill the political criteria. Okay, I said I would come back to the Copenhagen criteria. Just to remember, we have criteria in different areas that we need to, all EU members need to establish before they can become an EU member. Political, legal, and the last one, I forgot. Economic. Thank you. Yes, that's the one that shouldn't be left out, because the EU actually started as an economic union. It seems like the political ones seem to come up more often. When we see that the EU Commission has commended Turkish progress in the EU accession process, and the fact that they say in their 2010 report that Turkey continues to sufficiently fulfill the political criteria. This analysis challenges the Orientalist argument that, again, Islamic values and societies are not compatible with European ones, and that Muslim population of Turkey is not capable of integrating themselves into the social, economic, and political lives of the Europeans. Kemal Kirişçi draws attention to the paradox that's reflected by having secular EU, trying to exclude Turkey due to religious reasons, and having an Islamist-labeled government in office that has led Turkey a long way through the cumbersome Europeanization process on the other. Professor Kirişçi also adds that the AKP government is an example that Islam and pluralist democracy can coexist. This paradox in itself shakes the foundations of the Orientalist representations within the Turkish membership discourse. The Muslim other is advancing in the EU membership process, utilizing European values within a secular framework. This religion-based reasoning contradicts with the European secular narrative that EU upholds. İhsan Dağı argues that AKP's enthusiasm for the EU membership as a part of the greater westernization project of modern Turkey responded to the yearning for a deeper democracy, more comprehensive human rights, and all other economic, political, social rights. This, I will try to sum it up. This long and detailed discussion, which could go much longer, may be received as an exaggerated defiance of the Orientalist narratives. However, the recent discussions related to the integration and or assimilation of Muslim minorities in Europe, the French ban on headscarves and recent ban on the face cover, the Swiss minaret ban, the anti-Muslim and anti-Turkish comments made by European leaders, are constant reminders of the increasing and widespread Orientalist production of knowledge that represents Muslims and Turks as the other. The dissemination of these representations as true knowledge leads to tension and instability within Turkey and EU. EU harmonization process has been instrumental as Turkey assumes new roles in the international arena and reshapes and redefines its identity, which also affects the European identity. The Orientalist narrative that's activated within the EU discourse as EU tries to define its values and set its limits has been the cause of tension between the parties from the first day. The result of the decision, first, EU has to ask a question. EU can choose between either considering or ignoring the challenges that have been produced to the Orientalist narrative of what Turkey represents. Then, according to the answer of this decision or this question, the future of the EU project for Turkey and the European Union will be decided on. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Selcen Oner, from Bahcesehir University. The title of the paper is The Place of EU in Multidimensional Turkish Foreign Policy.
Thank you. You let me sit here, so it's better to sit here normally because I will not use the PowerPoint presentation. First, I would like to thank you, thank the organizers of this conference for giving me the chance to come here and to meet with you. I will focus on my presentation, focus on reasons of increasing emphasis on multidimensional approach in Turkish foreign policy in the post-Cold War era, particularly during the second term of the AKP government since 2007. And the place of the EU in this multidimensional Turkish foreign policy. When we look at the establishment process of Turkish Republic, we can see that the most important goal of Turkey was to reach to the level of contemporary civilizations, which has been Western countries that has determined main direction of Turkish foreign policy. This trend can be traced back to the Reformation period of the Ottoman state in the 18th century. And because of the geostrategic location of Turkey and its problematic neighborhood, and the military's traditionally strong influence on the domestic politics, Turkey prioritized hard power and securitized Turkish foreign policy during the Cold War era. But there were some exceptional periods, of course, for example, like after the Johnson's letter, etc., when there were some problems with the West, usually Turkey started to attempt to implement more multi-dimensional approach in Turkish foreign policy. When we look at the post-Cold War era, the post-Cold War era created new opportunities and challenges for Turkish foreign policy. And the main goal of Turkish foreign policy was to adjust to the new international circumstances of the post-Cold War. Turkish foreign policy has been transformed from a reactive foreign policy in the Cold War to a more proactive policy in the post-Cold War, also with the changing of the circumstances. In the early 1990s, although it was cautious and moderate, Turkish foreign policy was proactive in the Balkans, Middle East, and Caucasus. Participation in the Gulf War was an important turning point for Turkey's traditional policy of avoiding involving in the Middle Eastern affairs. It opened a new period of activism in Turkish foreign policy towards the Middle East. Turkey's position as a link of the East-West energy corridor for the export of Caspian gas and oil to Western markets has enhanced its geostrategic position, and it has become a key energy hub. And in the post-Cold War era, Turkey's external and domestic politics have become increasingly more interconnected with each other. Because of domestic problems, Turkey could not adapt easily to the dynamic international system in the 1990s. When we look at the Turkish foreign policy, is after the end of 1990s, and especially after the post-Helsinki summit, in the post-Helsinki era, we can see that when Turkey was given an official candidate status by the EU, Turkey has been under Europeannization process in various policy fields, including its foreign policy. When we look at the concept of Europeannization, which can be defined in different ways, but Bradley defines Europeannization as a process of construction, diffusion, institutionalization of formal and informal rules, procedures, policy paradigms, styles, ways of doing things, and shared beliefs and norms, which are first defined and consolidated in the EU, and then incorporated in the logic of domestic discourse, political structures, and public policies. When we look at the Europeannization of Turkish foreign policy, we can see that the EU membership prospect has positively influenced the goal of establishing a balance between freedom and security in Turkey, which is unique. Why? Because in the post-September 11 era, there has been a tendency to shift away from democratization to securitization at the global level, especially with the effect of increasing international terrorism, while Turkey continued to increase individual liberties of its citizens, including expansion of cultural rights of its Kurdish citizens to fulfill the Copenhagen political criteria. With the effect of Europeannization in Turkish foreign policy, diplomacy and trade are starting to be preferred more, and problem-solving by dialogue, win-win discourse, have been increasingly emphasized, and mediation efforts of Turkey have increased. When we look at the implications of this Europeannization of foreign policy, we can see that it has influenced the relations of Turkey with some of its neighbors like Greece and Armenia. After the referendum in 2004, for the Annan Plan, Turkey's Cyprus policy also has evolved from a more confrontational position to one that is more accommodative and open to dialogue. Turkey supported guest vote in the referendum, and the main discourse of Turkey about Cyprus issue has transformed to a win-win discourse. Although a cautious rapprochement emerged between Turkey and Greece in the fields of tourism, civil society and trade, still Cyprus and Aegean disputes still have not been solved in this process. When we look at the relations with Armenia, the EU has encouraged Turkey to develop closer relations with Armenia and to lift the embargo against Armenia. On 10 October 2009, Turkey and Armenia signed an agreement in Switzerland to establish diplomatic relations. However, the protocols have not been ratified yet, so it's still in a process. One of the main influences of the Europeannization process on Turkish foreign policy is the decrease in the role of traditional central players in foreign policy making, especially military. The EU has pushed Turkey to establish civilian control of the military through reforms in the composition and role of the National Security Council. Turkish Parliament adopted a reform package in July 2003, which changed the structure of the National Security Council, and decreases influence in decision-making. Also, the government appointed a new civilian secretary general in 2004, and the laws were amended for making civilian members the majority in the National Security Council, and introduced new rules of conduct for its accountability and transparency. On the other hand, when we look at the actors in the foreign policy field, civil society has become more proactive and influential in Turkish foreign policy, and the influence of the public opinion in Turkish foreign policy has increased. Civil society organizations such as Discussant, Turkish Industrials and Businessmen Association, Turkish Union of Chambers and Stock Exchange, TOC, have increased their voice and influence in foreign policy issues, also many others, of course. The EU has contributed to the development of this process of civil society through giving funds to projects and through supporting democratization process in Turkey. And also, when we look at the role of the public opinion in foreign policy, discussions on Cyprus issue in Turkey and Turkey's contribution to the war in Iraq have provided opportunities for public debates, which provide a less state-centric and more inclusive period in foreign policy making. When we look at the increasing multidimensional approach in Turkish foreign policy, we can observe this especially this trend in the post-Cold War era at the beginning that accelerated during the AKP government, particularly during the second term of the AKP government since 2007. During the first term of the AKP government, especially from 2002 to 2005, the EU was the main focus of Turkish foreign policy. As Öniş and Yılmaz argue, at the beginning of the AKP government, there was a stronger emphasis on Europeannization, which was traced back to the reforms under